Good morning, boys and girls. Today, we're going to finish all of our reading from A Child's History of the World by Virgil Hillyer, because we only read half of this book this year. Chapter 42 is called New Places, New Heroes. So we're going to talk about a couple of those, and then I'll show you some pictures. And then you can write something or draw something for me in your journal. And I want to thank you for your journal pictures because some of you are just absolutely blowing me away with the pictures that you are doing. They are so good. So I thank you for those. So let's get started. Germanic kings were ruling over pieces of the Western Empire. So if you remember, Rome owned all this land, and part of it had fallen, and then part of it had, remember Constantinople? Constantine, who started Constantinople and the Byzantine Empire. So this part, okay, the western part had fallen, but the eastern part was still rolling. Now, it says, in Constantinople, a Roman was still ruling over the Eastern Empire. Now, his name, and this Roman, was Justinian. Justinian the Great. Now, up to this time, there had been a great many rules or laws by which the people were governed. There were so many of these rules, and they were so mixed up that one law would tell you to do something, and another law would tell you not to. It was as if your mother said, you can stay up till 9 o'clock tonight. And then your father said, you have to go to bed at 8. So it was hard for people to tell, what they should do. They didn't understand. So in order to untangle all of this mess, this snarl, Justinian had a set of laws made for the government of his people. And many of these were so good and so just that we still follow some of those rules and laws today. If you notice that Justinian begins with just, J-U-S-T, this will help you remember that he was the one who made laws just, or made the just laws. So let me show you a picture of Justinian, the emperor, Justinian I. This is a picture of him. Okay. I'm going to show you another picture of him because that one's kind of, hard to... There we go. That one's more lifelike. Now, he ruled with his queen, and his queen was Theodora. Let me see if I can find you a picture of he and Theodora. There we go. So there's Justinian and Theodora together in the Byzantine Empire. And then we have, and we don't know exactly what he looked like. So we've got a couple of different pictures, I guess. Here we go. So that gives you an idea of Justinian. Okay, so Justinian did some good stuff. Other than making the laws, he also did something or built something that lasted till today. And it was to build in Constantinople a very beautiful church called Hagia Sophia or Santa Sophia. And it is no longer a church, but it is still standing. And if you go to Constantinople, you go to Turkey today, you can see it. And it had nothing to do with war or law. Oh, wait a second. I want to show you a picture of this church. It's beautiful. This is an artistic rendition of the inside of Santa Sophia, the church. All right, let me go back then. There you go. Isn't that beautiful? Gorgeous church. Trying to find you some other pictures of it. from different angles. This is what it looked like inside. So we're talking a beautiful church, and Justinian built it. You can see it from afar. Okay. So it is pretty, very pretty. All right. Now, you can go and see that church today. It is a beautiful sight to see. And still another thing Justinian did that you could never guess, because it had nothing to do with war or law or buildings. Travelers from the Far East, where China now is today, had brought back tales of a wonderful caterpillar that wound itself up with a fine thin thread over a mile long. And they told stories of how the Chinese, they unwound this thread and they wove it into cloth of the finest and smoothest kind. And this thread, as you might guess, was called silk. And the caterpillar that made it was called the silkworm. People in Europe had seen this beautiful silk cloth, but how it was made had been a mystery, a secret. They thought it was so wonderfully beautiful that it was supposed to have been made by fairies or elves, or even sent down from heaven. It was so silky. That's where we get silky from. Justinian found out about these caterpillars, and he had men bring these silkworms into Europe so that his people also might make silk cloth and have silk ribbons and fine silk garments, and therefore we give him the honor of starting the manufacturing of silk in Europe. So let's see what a silkworm looks like. So here's a picture. Okay, there's the silkworm. He's on a mulberry leaf because that's what they eat. And then they go into their cocoon, and their cocoon is very fluffy, made of silk. And so people harvest the silk, and they make it into a thread. And then they can create all kinds of, and here's the silkworm moth. And they make silk. It's kind of got a shiny quality to it. It's hard to see the silky part. Yeah, maybe you can see the shiny part there. Anyway, this absolutely does not go with what I have on. Oh, but it's very beautiful. That's a silky, silky silk scarf. Okay. So let's move on with the rest of our lesson. So about the same time that Justinian lived, there was a king in France. Now his name was Clovis. Now Clovis belonged to the Germanic tribe called the Franks, and that's where we get the name France from. The Franks kind of came into France, they took over, and now it's called France. Now Clovis believed in Thor and Woden, and all his people did. And we talked about those earlier in a different lesson. But Clovis had a wife named Clotilda. That's a name for you, Clotilda. And he loved her dearly. But Clotilda thought all the fighting and cruelty, which her people seemed to like, she thought all that was wrong. She had heard about the religion of Christ, Jesus Christ, which did not believe in quarreling and fighting, and she thought she would like to be a Christian. So she was baptized. And she then tried to persuade her husband, Clovis, to become a Christian too. Now, Clovis was just then getting ready to go to war, the very thing the Christians preached against. However, to please his wife, remember he loved her very much, he said, "I promise you, wife, if we win the battle, I will become a Christian." And guess what? He did win. So he kept his word. He was baptized. Then he made all his soldiers be baptized, whether they wanted to or not, which is not Christian. Clovis made Paris his capital, and Paris is still the capital of France. So I want to show you a picture of France, of Paris. So here is the Eiffel Tower in Paris, which is in France. And a lot of people, when they think of France, they think of the Eiffel Tower. Here is a picture of more of the city. You see that? And this is really cool because this is the Eiffel Tower at night. So that's Paris. And that's where Clovis and Clotilda, that's where they lived. And they brought Christianity to France. Now, at the same time that you had Justinian in Constantinople and you had Clovis in France, there was a king named Arthur who was ruling in England. Now, many stories and poems have been written about him, most of which are probably mythical and not true. Although we know these stories are not true, they are nevertheless really good stories. They're very interesting and important, like the tales about the heroes of the Trojan War. We know some of those are too far-fetched to be real, but we still like to hear them. So it was said that there was a sword called Excalibur. You might have heard of it. And it was stuck so fast in a stone that no one could draw it out except the man who should be king of England. All the nobles had tried without success to draw the sword, when one day a young boy named Arthur pulled it out with the greatest ease, and he was accordingly proclaimed king. So let's look at a picture of Excalibur. So here's Excalibur. You see that? Fancy sword, huh? Very cool. All right. So King Arthur, young King Arthur, he chose a company of nobles to rule with him, and as they sat with him at a table that was round, most tables back then were rectangular or square. A round table would be hard to make because they didn't have the tools, to easily make that. But he sat at a round table, and they were known as the Knights of the Round Table. Tennyson, a great English poet, has written in verse an account of the doings of King Arthur and his knights in a long poem called The Idylls of the King, which you will have to read for yourself. So I want to show you King Arthur and the Round Table. We have so many renditions of King Arthur and the Round Table. So I'm going to show you a couple of them because they're interesting and they're all different. And these, it's just, so do we know what exactly it looked like? We don't. We don't exactly know what King Arthur looked like. We do know that he was a real king. He may have looked like this. We just do not know. But we know that many, many tales have been written about King Arthur and his round table. And the good part is when you get a little bit older, you're going to read all about King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. So you'll learn much more about him. So the last thing I wanted to show you was a map. Okay, can you see that map? Okay, what I wanted to show you is this is Turkey. This is where Constantinople was. This is where Justinian was. At the same time, Clovis was here in France, in Paris, France. And at the same time, King Arthur was in England. All that was going on at the same time. But it is still considered, kind of the end of ancient history and the beginning of medieval times, which is what you will learn about next year, all about Knights of the Round Table and medieval times, knights and chivalry and all that good stuff. So you have lots to look forward to. All right, well, I'll see you later, boys and girls. Bye-bye.